Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, January 5th. From the San Antonio Express News, my name is Luis Vasquez, and this is your Express Briefing. All of the stories you need to know to start your day. You can expect intermittent clouds and a high of 69 degrees in San Antonio today. The pandemic isn't over, and 2020 is just barely behind us. But Texas reached a symbolic checkpoint Monday. Visitors and legislative staff have returned to the Texas Capitol, 10 months after the building was shuttered amid the coronavirus pandemic. This morning, you're invited to join our editorial board as they interview leaders from community labs and local school districts about what's next in the fight for widespread, fast, cheap COVID-19 testing. And now let's move on to our top stories for the day. Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar sent a long-awaited final report on the shooting deaths of a mother and her two daughters back to his detectives for further scrutiny on Monday, trading insults with a lawyer for the family of one of the girls in the process. The decision to take another look came just before the 2-year anniversary of the killings of San Antonio hairstylist Nicole Layla Olson and her two daughters Alexa Denise Montez and London Sofia Brivescas. In an email responding to public pressure for action on the case from an attorney representing the youngest victim's father and other relatives, Salazar said he wanted his Criminal Investigation Division to submit its final report on the case by Christmas. But now, he and his command staff have shifted course. Peggy O'Hare has the latest over at expressnews.com. After years of enduring her stepfather's abuse, Diane Talbert had had enough. At the age of 15, she fled. She stayed with friends, couch surfing, and sometimes living on the streets between moving from place to place. During those uncertain days, she was determined to stay in school and maintain high grades. At 18, she enlisted in the Air Force. Taking the oath to serve her country gave her purpose and a gateway from a painful past to a brighter future. Today, 64-year-old Talbert is Executive Director of Communities Under the Bridge, a faith-based nonprofit on the east side that offers worship services, basic necessities, and healthcare to the homeless. Read more about her work and her career over at expressnews.com. Republican Governor Greg Abbott's March 22, 2020 executive order to clear space for COVID-19 patients put a stop to all surgeries and procedures that were not considered medically necessary, which by the state's definition included abortion care. Researchers found that during the ban, the number of abortions in Texas declined 38% in April 2020 compared to the same time the previous year. Meanwhile, the number of Texans receiving care at out-of-state facilities increased exponentially, and the number of second trimester abortions jumped 61% after the order expired. Such abortions, while generally considered very safe, are associated with a higher risk of complications and may require additional doctor's visits compared to earlier term procedures. Taylor Goldstein has more on this story at expressnews.com. The first day for candidates to file to run for city council is next Wednesday, and they'll have until February 12 to make their campaigns official. District 5 on the west side may see some competition as term limits prevent Councilwoman Shirley Gonzalez from seeking re-election. It'll open opportunities for candidates, some who've never run for office. Marie Crabb intends to be one of them. She's 34, native to San Antonio, and a St. Mary's University graduate who sells real estate. Though it's hard to ascertain definitively, she may be the first Native American to run for city council. Elena Ayala tells her story in her latest column over at expressnews.com. Now that more Texans can receive the coronavirus vaccine, we have everything that you need to know about the vaccine over at expressnews.com. We also have a dashboard monitoring how much of the state has been vaccinated and another dashboard where we're tracking San Antonio's COVID-19 case counts, hospitalizations, positivity rate, and more. Next up are your need-to-know headlines. You can find all of these headlines and more inside of your Express News subscription. As cases of COVID-19 surged to record levels in San Antonio, about 1,400 people received a first dose of Moderna's vaccine at the Wonderland of the Americas Mall on Monday, the equivalent of about 8 people every 5 minutes. With those infected with the coronavirus accounting for nearly 1/3 of all hospital patients, San Antonio's healthcare system is on the cusp of treating a record number of people for COVID-19. San Antonio water system leaders want the courts to spike a petition drive to overhaul the city-owned water utility before it has collected enough signatures for voters to have a say in the matter. San Antonio Police Chief William McManus and the incoming head of the police union put up a united front against efforts to repeal 2 local laws that give police the right to collectively bargain. Texas Republicans have taken center stage in President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the election he lost, and now they plan to stand in the way of certifying the results this week, even as top members of the party acknowledge Trump's defeat. A Chavano Park Fire Department captain has filed federal discrimination lawsuit against a small city in North Bexar County, saying he wasn't hired for the fire chief's job because he is Hispanic. In another stroke of misfortune, Spurs guard Derek White will be sidelined indefinitely with a non-displaced fracture of his left second toe. It's the same toe White had surgically repaired over the offseason. 14 million Americans who lost their jobs at the beginning of the pandemic are still relying on some form of federal unemployment aid to feed their families and pay for housing, notes Chris Tomlinson, who writes that COVID's impact on low-income workers will slow the economy without intervention. San Antonio dentist Dr. Philip Miner is using a wearable air filtration device made in San Antonio to protect against COVID-19 while he's working on patients. Read more about the powered air purifying respirator over at expressnews.com. Scott McNaughton, a sergeant investigator in the Public Integrity and Cybercrime Division of Bexar County District Attorney's Office, will have a seat on a panel in Austin dealing with mental health issues among criminal offenders. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is headed to D.C. on Wednesday for a March to Save America rally supporting President Donald Trump as he and other Texas Republicans continue to deny the results of the presidential election. Paxton's lawsuit seeking to overturn the 2020 presidential election will cost the state and taxpayers at least $12,000 for printing charges, but Paxton's office is refusing to provide a full accounting, saying that information is exempt from disclosure. Drawn in part by San Antonio's burgeoning population, a California real estate firm is adding to its holdings in the area. Pasco Companies recently purchased Lenox Overlook, a high-end apartment complex on the north side, from Austin-based Odin Hughes. Initially, the Spurs planned to allow a limited number of fans to attend games at the AT&T Center, but the Express News editorial board writes, quote, "It would make no sense to invite crowds, even small ones, into an arena as the virus rages." Just days before San Antonio unveiled its innovative animal and human land bridge over Wurzbach Parkway, connecting the two halves of Hardberger Park, and before a mild heart attack briefly put him in the hospital, the city's first mayor to be labeled green in a good way was explaining how he came to care about the natural world. Convinced by the 5th grade he would be a leader, Hardberger became a captain in the Air Force. He went on to become executive secretary in the Peace Corps in President John F. Kennedy's administration, worked for President Lyndon B. Johnson in economic development, and was Chief Justice of Texas's 4th District Court of Appeals in San Antonio before serving as mayor. Through it all, and especially in times of grief, he was drawn into the restorative touch of nature, he said. Read more about former San Antonio Mayor Phil Hardberger in Bruce Selcraig's latest article over at expressnews.com. So much has changed in the week since Thompson put on a show in the Alamo Bowl, torching Colorado's defense for 170 yards and 4 touchdowns on 8 for 10 passing over 5 immaculate second-half drives. Thompson wasn't almost around for that moment in San Antonio. Nick Moyle tells his story in his latest article at expressnews.com. Texas barbecue may not need sauce, but the public demands it because it's good. In this week's Chuck's Food Shack, we show you how to make a good sauce and when to apply it. In an announcement Monday, Burger Boy said it will open its 4th San Antonio location by spring. Home court advantage has been anything but for NBA teams this season. That is good news for a struggling Spurs team setting out on a 5-game road swing. We asked several notable San Antonians to share their general and personal wishes for the new year. Find out what they told us over at expressnews.com. And that's all for today. This was your Express Briefing for Tuesday, January 5th. My name is Luis Vasquez. Please consider becoming an Express News subscriber to get in-depth coverage on all the stories you heard today. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast inside of your Apple Podcast app, as it really helps the show. Have a wonderful day, everyone.